Kevin McCarthy's bid to become Speaker of the House, falling short 3 rounds of voting. The House now adjourned until noon today. Florida Congressman-elect Byron Donalds switched his vote for Speaker to Congressman Jim Jordan during the 3rd ballot, bringing the number of GOP lawmakers against McCarthy to 20. What's going to change today, and why did he do it? Congressman-elect Byron Donalds joins us now. Congressman, after watching the vote astoundingly and seeing 19 short, we saw you jump ship. First off, your mindset for doing that. What did you think would happen when you decided to go with Jim Jordan?
Well, a couple things. One, I had signaled to people I would vote for Kevin on ballot 1. I was possible on a ballot 2. I made that vote. At that point, we were basically deadlocked, and it was pretty clear that he didn't have the votes. So my thoughts is, okay, if he doesn't have the votes, what are we going to do as a conference to either find someone who can get to 218 or at a minimum adjourn what we were doing, get off the floor so the needed negotiations can happen. I think that it was actually not in a good place for the Republican conference to stay on the House floor yesterday and continuously vote. Look, a lot of people back home are trying to figure out what's going on Capitol Hill. But what we are really having is a deliberative process about House leadership and about what is needed to get Washington back on track. For too long in the nation's capital, everybody has just gone along with the next wave of leadership. And that's not an anti-Kevin McCarthy statement. That is a statement about what a deliberative, open process means for the constitutional republic that is the United States of America.
Pete Sessions, Republican voting for Kevin McCarthy, says, no doubt about it, the Republicans have lost prestige. And the opponents to Kevin McCarthy have dug in. So it looks like he feels this is a lose-lose. You don't feel that way?
No, I think if you've listen, I've been here not as long as Pete Sessions has, but one thing I know about this place is every time there's something going on, we find a way to make it happen. And I firmly believe we're going to elect a speaker and find a way to make this happen. But you have members who are no's against Kevin. Now, I think that right now what needs to happen is some of those members need to have one-on-one meetings with him and hammer this stuff out. I don't know if that's happened or not, but from what I'm hearing, that's probably further apart than it needs to be. So after I talk with you guys this morning, I'm going to sit with some members, try to find ways that we can hammer out a resolution so we can go ahead, elect a speaker, and get down to the business that the American people sent us here to do.
So I understand the demands, and it's hard to get the demands. It's the weirdest negotiation ever. He agreed to allow 5 lawmakers to oust him. He did not guarantee committee slots to the Freedom Caucus members as most demanded. He did not go ahead and agree to a legal board to pursue investigations and creating a select committee just to investigate the FBI. These are all things that you guys could have hammered out behind closed doors because your objective is the same way, because you want to get the same results. These seem like small things.
Well, look, I think what you're talking about is small are actually things that are critical to the House moving forward. We know we have an issue with elements of the FBI. That's not a shock to anybody. We know that. Number 2, with respect to the motion to vacate. The motion to vacate rule, whether it's been 100 years, 200 years, it's something that many speakers have lived under.
Okay.
Listen, I'm from the business world.
But he gave in.
Well, no, he actually did not give in. He tried to have a 5-vote measure, and there are members who want a single-member motion to vacate, which was the rule in the House. Now, I know people back home are saying, like, why are you arguing about the rules? The rules matter in how you govern this place, because once we elect a speaker, the rules are going to dictate how the House functions, and that goes directly to the ability of us actually accomplishing the solutions that everybody wants to see here on Capitol Hill.
So you would like to, Congressman, would you want to be, let me just finish. Can you would want to be speaker knowing that one person could vote you out?
If you're trying to have the job and you're going to lead, you shouldn't be afraid of one person. And I've been very clear about this. I think too much has been made about the motion to vacate. That was a rule here for 100 years or more about one member being able to file it. But in the real world, not the political world, in the real world, if you are going to lead a company, the board of directors at any time can hold a vote against you. It only takes one member of the board to bring a question about the CEO or the chairman of the board. That happens all the time. So in politics, we are taking Pelosi's rule and saying, oh, well, Pelosi's rule that she changed is now okay. That's not true. There's nothing wrong with having a one-member motion to vacate. I think that any leader who wants to be able to stand firm and say, look, I'm the guy, shouldn't be afraid of that.
Congressman, do you blame him for $30 trillion in debt?
No, I don't blame Kevin per se for $30 trillion in debt. What I do think is that it's the institution itself as to why we are where we are. We know Washington isn't working, so there are members here who want to make fundamental changes to it so we can get the nation back on track by getting the House of Representatives working and functioning again.
How are you going to vote today?
That remains to be seen. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be negotiated out. I want a resolution. I want us to elect a speaker. I want to get down to the business of the American people. But I can tell you what I saw yesterday on the floor, we were not there. We were deadlocked, and it was not looking good for the Republican conference, and we needed to get out of that room and really have those conversations. And we're going to continue to do that.
If right now nothing changes, would you recommend postponing the noon vote?
No. I think we should go back and vote today and kind of see where members are. And actually, members need to have some conversations about where they think the conference should be going. Look, I think there is a pathway still for Kevin to become Speaker of the House. I do. But there's going to be work that needs to be done to get there.
All right, Congressman Byron Donalds, people are going to be looking at you, too. You were the only one to jump from pro-Kevin to pro-Jim Jordan. We'll see where we go from here. Thanks, Congressman.
All right, anytime.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.